I may need to bounce if I get at about 8:30 or so.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
Just thinking if I want to call to order, give another minute here. Let's give it one more minute since we're still waiting on 2 people, and then we'll call the meeting to order.
I just pulled Tony in.
Great. All right, let's go ahead then and start, and Mimi will join when she joins us. So let's call to order the meeting of the Southborough ARPA Committee. It's 7:32. Do a roll call. Pull up my list so I don't forget anyone. Mimi Luttrell is not here. Joe Palmer is not here. Tony Schoner.
Here.
John Wood.
Here.
Tim Martell.
Hello.
And Ann Rubenstein.
Present.
And I am here, Andrea Hamilton. Oh, Mimi. Mimi Luttrell, you here?
Yes.
All right. So before we kick in, can I get a volunteer for notes or for minutes?
So I was going to say I'll do it next week, but tonight, but this week would not be good for me. So I'll sign up for next Thursday.
Okay. You know, you have a month to get them in. So if you signed up for
Yeah.
today, you wouldn't have to get them in.
I have a very complicated week, but next week
Okay.
I will sign up.
Tony for minutes next
take
week. So
'em.
we'll put that in the minutes. All right. Thanks, John. All right. I'm going to just quickly go through our agenda for today. Let me know when you can see my screen. Am I sharing?
Yes.
Great. So the majority of the meeting today, we're going to spend on our survey discussion, really focusing on the content we want to include in preparation for it going live on Monday. I have a line item to review our fund request log. This should be very quick, just taking a look at what's new. And then community outreach discussion. There's a couple open items here. In particular, it seems that the postcards that we were originally going to use, the size is no longer accepted by the post office. And it's now, as a result, almost more than twice as expensive as we thought it was going to be, likely between reapproving a budget for that, if we can even get the budget, and trying to get them out to the door. The timing's not going to make sense. So just a quick touch point here on alternative reach outs, as we're probably looking at flyers. And then also just a quick look at what Ann's got going up on the transfer station sign. If we have time, we can start talking about our evaluation approach. Then we've got next steps in any unfinished business, public comment, and confirming details for our next meeting. So any questions on agenda? All right. So with that, again, I think the majority of this meeting is going to be spent finalizing the content for the survey. So there's 2 ways I think we could do this. So one is, Anne, if you want to lead off of the landing page, or I can pull up the tracker and we can kind of go through what we have and figure out how we want to label things in the survey, sort of categorize and bucket. I'm good either way.
Since I can't call up 2 screens, I think it'd be better if you do what you suggest.
Why don't I do that? And again, the goal here is not to like discuss any of the individual items. It's really just to sort of think about how we want to categorize them on the survey and the language we want to use on the survey. All right. Let me know when you can see.
You can see.
All right, great. So I had an anticipation of this pop just a category in here for survey. So again, we can just, the goal here is just to figure out which of these we want to include, if we want to include every line item, if we want to bucketize things in any way, if we want to create any category structure within their survey itself. I I guess I'll open it up first. I know folks have taken a look at it over the last week. I had some feedback from from the capital side of things. Any strong opinions out the gate around this?
Of what? Like what would like into
How
the
we'd like to
survey?
structure it? Yeah. So I mean, we can just go line by line if we think that makes sense and talk about it.
Sure, I guess. I like your idea, put bucketing some of these things as well. Like if it's community projects, you could make on the survey, on that thing, I think you'd make some of this a little more broad when we put it into the survey. Is
And
that what you're looking for now, or is that more of a later thing?
I think that's fine feedback for right now too. Maybe that's something we think about as we go through. What we consider what the big bucket would be for each of these and what we'd call it. Anne, I see your hand.
I guess my question would be, would we be prioritizing within each bucket? Or because Matt had said that for each person, the survey is randomized. I may get tax abatement at the top and somebody else is going to get 1-year contract with interface referral or whatever. So how would that work?
I think the buckets would just be random. You'd just have, less questions instead of having, what do we got, like 22 things on this?
I think it's more than that. It's about 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah, 30 something,
How about
I
this?
guess-
Oops, go ahead, Anne.
Could you give an example, John? Because I'm not following. Would you prioritize within the bucket or would it be overall?
prioritize in the bucket, I prioritize overall. Like tax abatement, we really have that as one. Community, I'm just trying to put out words. This isn't what I mean, like community relief funds for blah, blah, blah. You can put it towards different things in there. I just don't, on the survey, I worry that this part of it is, we're gonna have 30 something things on the front page of a survey. I'm just worried that people will get click fatigue.
Can I maybe suggest we take sort of a first pass at going through and looking and thinking about where we could kind of consolidate things down into maybe just one category. So for example, I have both the request from like the fire department and the police department for COVID for pay, right? So I have both of those. One of the pieces of feedback I had received was, maybe it's not even worth it to sort of start itemizing out which, like, those are the departments I've gotten specific requests from, but probably at the point when we start evaluating and looking at it, if we start considering, pay for fire department and police, we'd probably need to also think about what it would mean to have expanded pay for all the essential workers right in town. And so maybe that bucket just becomes, hey guy, I'm on a call. Sorry, hang on one second, guys.
It's your turn.
You don't realize
sorry about
it
that.
yet, but you're gonna miss that.
Oh gosh, so much, right? It's very important questions about tablet video games. Right. So getting back to this, right. So right now I've got 2 lines that are dedicated to bonus pay for fire and police, but maybe actually what that does is it collapses to one line that's just premium pay for, town essential workers or whatever it is, the language is that's around that, right? So that might be pretty quick as we go through this, that we see that, there's a handful of categories really that this all collapses into. So maybe we just kind of start running through and thinking about, how things kind of fall out thematically. Would that make sense? Yes.
Yes.
Good. Okay. All right. So the tax abatement relief, I think that is just a category in itself, right? I think there's sort of a 2-pronged economic relief that is either one category that's just some sort of direct financial relief, or 2 buckets, one that's, tax relief and one that's like alternative economic relief. Does that seem correct as either one or two categories? Oh, Tim, I see your hand.
Yeah, I really don't like the idea of keeping things generic or high level. If it's not specific, it shouldn't be included. I mean,
Yep, go ahead.
What, we talk about community relief. There's something real behind the relief for taxpayers. With the impact on residential property values going up so high and commercial properties going down so low, there's been such a shift of the tax base in the last year from commercial to the residential properties. And it's happened so suddenly because of COVID. And people's tax bills are going up so high because of COVID that it makes sense to give people an abatement. It's a direct consequence of COVID. And it's very specific, it's very actionable. Now we talk about generic stuff that's not relevant to property taxes. I've heard things at a very high level, but I haven't heard a specific action or initiative that some group can take. And until I hear that, I just don't want to move it forward.
Yeah, I will agree with you that I haven't seen any proposal that gets to that. And I know we've reached out to a lot of groups and I keep hoping something will come in, but I have yet to see anything that is specific to that point.
I mean, the first thing I would do if there's a need-based, I think that maybe one thing we can do is there could be an outreach or a communication effort, maybe by the select board, to help the town understand what's available, like the Commission of the Public Trust, because there's money available and there's a board that's dedicated to this. And I think most people don't know about it. And so maybe that's something specific we could do. I can't think of anything else.
Anne, I see your hand.
I actually was thinking from a totally opposite point of view. I thought we were asking residents for opinions in general, not on specific projects. People have proposed, let's get more sidewalks. There was a proposal for the outreach materials. I don't think we have the space or information that we could be specific on each item. Even if we had all the information, it would just be too complex to fill out.
Yeah, I was kind of thought maybe, I might've been thinking about this all wrong. Happy to admit that. I thought that we were going to collect and collate all of this data and then come up with what we thought might be, say, a top 10 or even a top 5. And then present that to the public to get their input on how they would like to prioritize this. If we give them 5 to 10 things that are very actionable, how would they like to prioritize the spend? That's what I thought we were doing.
So I think we could consider it in either direction, right? So I think what we present to the select board, we have in general, as a committee said, should be very actionable and specific, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that when we go to solicit feedback, the categories need to reflect that, right? If we think that putting 30 things in front of the public is just going to mean we get nothing because people won't click, right? We can collapse 3 buckets of sidewalks or infrastructure projects into a generic category, see that that's something that people want, and then within our committee, make a more refined proposal from that information, right? So I think we could approach it that way, which again, I think, Tim, to your point, doesn't mean we're not presenting something that is specific and actionable out. It's just the reality that it might be challenging to get meaningful data if we put so many things in a survey, because people then just might not click on it. Is that kind of, Anne, what you were thinking in terms of categories, where we go a little bit higher level here?
Yes, I thought that we were going to distill it down once we got some feedback from the community, the directions they'd like to see. We're not married to what they say either. We're just trying to collect some sentiment. From my point of view, and I can understand what Tim's saying too, because specifics often work better. I just thought we would be working on the specific, narrowing down the specific proposals. But I'm open to whatever people want to do.
Tim, does that,
We
go
have
ahead.
we have a nice number of proposals in front of us, right?
yes,
Um,
we've got 35, I think right now. Yeah, 35.
and I think we agree that this is too many to present to the public.
There's
Um,
32.
If we I mean, I don't know how people feel about these. I don't know if there are items that people feel, you know, hey, I would take that right off the list, or I'm completely in support of it. I think it would be interesting if you know, it's possible that this board has 5 items that we all agree on, right? And it takes up all the money.
My guess is that we probably don't have 5 we all agree on that would add up to the total sum. It's most of them are, I think we sort of the max ones are around 500,000. Yeah. Again, maybe just going through without belaboring each, would it make sense to just do a quick, like, let's just run through these and see if there's ones we absolutely think we should not be including, or if we see some that we think would make sense to kind of bucketize in some way, or we see some that we think we should call out specifically. Would that make sense?
I'm happy to do it.
Okay. So I think the first one is probably the least controversial, right? The tax abatement.
Yes.
That's one we want to ask about, right?
Yes,
Will we just call it tax abatement?
I mean,
Tax relief?
technically, right?
What's the- sorry.
Right. You mean the
Yeah.
vote was already taken on this one, right? This is a done deal.
Well, this is the one that was the done deal until it got rejected by the select board because they no longer needed as much money as we gave them when they redid the numbers. And so we had said that we would that at this point we were going to leave it on the list, and that we didn't want to come back with a revised number at this point, and that instead our general thought process was just to get under 5%. That's our committee's target, is to be able to provide whatever the dollars are to get under 5%. And as we get closer to presenting to the select board, it would be good to know what that refined number starts to look like, so we have an understanding of how much it draws down from our total pool. But that it won't be the 500. Likely it won't be the 500.
But that would be a number. It's possible that tax abatement is something that could happen each year for the next 3 years.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. That would also be a different, something we would have to propose.
Right. Okay.
So, John, I see your hand.
So isn't that something the selectmen had said, the select board had said in one of their past meetings, that they would like to, their initial thoughts were something like taking $1 million and of it and using that for tax relief over the next 2 or 3 years. Because I believe next year is a very heavy capital item
Yes.
year.
Yeah.
So
So this year ends up being significantly lower than was originally anticipated. And so it's closer to 100 grand that they need to go under the 5%. Whereas next year is a high capital year. So if we wanted to provide relief next year, they would need more of that pot.
okay.
So we don't have a firm proposal around it yet. I think, again, it's something that we all sort of generally agree we should do. The final structure of it isn't, the recommendation hasn't been put together yet. So just thinking about the survey, do we think this should be on the survey? I mean, the counter argument here is that we all feel pretty committed to that there's going to be something related to this, so maybe it's not worth asking. But this one seems so straightforward that it feels like it should be on there, because if for some reason nobody wanted it, that would
Be
mean
shocking,
something.
but you're
It
right.
would be shocking, but mean something, right? I mean, I do think that there is also this piece that's come up, that's sort of the sense that there are members in the town, people in the town who don't benefit from this, right? And so if we find that maybe people don't want it because they don't benefit, or the people who do benefit aren't the folks who are really in need of it. I don't know. Anne?
I think that we should have it as an item on the survey. It can't
Tax
hurt.
Yeah. Tax abatement, is that what you would call it? What we should call it?
Works for
Property
me.
tax, clarify property
I
tax.
like the way I like what it says, tax abatement / relief. It's a category. It's
Yeah.
not a specific amount.
Does everyone agree with adding the word property to it so it's very clear to folks what we're talking about? Okay. Next one is wastewater infrastructure. So again, this is one where I think Mimi was following up to get the specific proposal here. Oh no, this was John. There were a couple different opportunities for doing various wastewater projects. Oh, go ahead, Mimi.
So this and the next one, I think should come off. So this, I think it's too early for. There's a feasibility study that's being done and I don't.
And there
unless you-
may be future grant monies for that as well.
Yeah. And then the next
meeting-
one,
EDC is actually meeting in the morning, I believe, on that too.
So
to talk about that.
I'm not sure what's on the agenda, to be honest.
Okay.
So if I'm looking here, so the wastewater infrastructure and drainage both came from either planning, a combination of planning and EDC. As the
Yeah.
representatives for planning and EDC, do you guys both sort of from your committees say that this is too early and so we should remove it?
Well, for Route 9, I think it's too early
Yeah,
to use ARPA funds for because the feasibility study is being done. The next one, the Main Street, is being done and moved forward with, but it's all, so I talked to Karen Galligan to try and get numbers on this. And so it's going to start back up in the spring. It'll be done by the end of the year, but it's all commingled with other street projects. So there's chapter 90 money involved. So if we give ARPA funds toward this, they'd have to give the chapter 90 funds back, but it's hard to figure out what they're applied to because
So
there's so many
there's-
different projects going on. So this, I think it's just too complicated. So let her continue on. It's already funded.
So this is already funded through other money,
Yeah.
remove. And the one above here, which was it was the Route 9 public sewer and then wastewater infrastructure for downtown and inlet outlet pipe for potential wastewater system under Main Street. Those are all the wastewater infrastructure projects. So do we think all of those can come off the list?
Mimi, did she say anything about adding the drainage pipes?
She said that they're hoping that CSX does that. Yes.
Okay.
So that's a separate piece that CSX does, but we have to pay for. And she said, yes, that's part of it.
That'll be huge for the future, not so much as right now, but 30 years from now, it very well could be.
So drainage and a sleeve, I guess. So if it ever wants to connect for wastewater.
Nice.
So do we agree that, so for both of these sets, all the projects listed here, so these ones are either already funded or too early in feasibility to consider?
I would say yes.
These two, yeah.
Okay, and again, they're coming from between planning and EDC, so since we have representatives from those committees, I'm gonna just call that done then. Is that? Okay, so I think this maybe gets to the, is this a real, like, how formal is a proposal, right? So again, these two items came in from a Southborough resident. So one was around trash cans where the public sidewalks are installed, and the other is a dog park. But the reality is I don't have proposals for either. So we could include them if we don't include them, I would still like to at least capture them in our final report so that, you know, any feedback we get still remains logged somewhere. Just because I think it's, if someone takes the time to write in, I think that's worth
Absolutely.
keeping somewhere. But yeah, Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's good to keep it in the record. I think row 6 is a good example of, I mean, okay, you know, we buy trash cans, we put them on sidewalks, then what? Who's responsible? Who empties them?
Yep.
It's
It's
It's not
yeah.
actionable.
Yes, I agree with that.
And then
Yep.
row 7 is a perfect example of something I would urge the owner of this project to go to the CPC and get community preservation money. Dog park falls under rec. It's another funding source. Why take ARPA money when we could be looking for help from the Community Preservation Commission? So that's my feedback on the dog park.
So I think unless anyone disagrees, I would say that I think for our purposes, we can't consider these here because there isn't enough of a proposal behind them. And again, I'll strike them, I'd strike them through, but I want to think a little bit more about like where these get collated in the end, if it's just sort of a general, like, here's all the feedback we got that goes to the select board. Because again, I haven't gotten so many people who've reached out to me individually. And so it's clearly things that people feel strongly about. And I just feel like they should get recorded somewhere and not just get lost to time. So does anyone disagree that this wouldn't be part of our consideration for now? Would anyone want to see these on a survey? Anne?
I don't see any harm in including things that we're just asking for opinions. What if 400 people responded and 300 said, yes, we do want a dog park? All we're doing is making a report to the selectmen saying, people who responded said these are the things they want. It isn't that we didn't say we were only going to have formal proposals. And I don't mean to be argumentative, but I just think we're prejudging that we should be doing our evaluation once we get input.
I mean, our purpose is to figure out and give recommendations to the selectmen on how to spend the money. Right.
Right.
And feedback on a dog park or what have you, that's not actionable, will not help the selectmen.
But we don't know it doesn't have to be actionable at this moment. If they hear that people in town want a dog park, they could say, yes, we want to spend some of this money. I just
feel like that's not in our purview. There's a board that is looking, I think it's called the Master Plan Committee, and they're looking at what the town should be doing over the next X years. And it sounds like that's something that committee would be doing, polling the town to see what they want. For ourselves, I mean, we're charged with giving the selectmen recommendations on how to spend $3 million in an effective manner.
I will do whatever the committee wants. My point of view is that the survey is asking the community what they want. And then we're going to distill information down and make a recommendation on how we think.
Take it to the next step. Let's say we have 100 people who say they want a dog park. We go to the selectmen, we say 100 people want a dog park. They're going to say, okay, tell us how we can make that happen. And we're going to say, we have no idea. We're just telling you.
I don't think we have to have the ideas. We're just relaying the opinion of the public and if we prioritize it. We can say we heard from 100 people, we're not prioritizing. I think that we can just,
but how does
whatever
it help
the majority wants to do, I think that's fine.
I mean, I think they're looking for a series of actionable items that have both an estimated cost as well as an owner and a potential plan for moving it forward. Like, how much would a dog park cost? Nobody knows, right? And without that information, how is that useful to the select board?
Tony, I see your hand, and then Mimi.
Yeah, I just thought I'd voice my opinion here that it seems like we should be asking questions for things where that we know are actionable, that money can be spent, that this, the select board could say, okay, take $300,000 and do A, B, C. So I personally don't think it's productive to ask about things where we don't have any, scope or time frame or amount. Because it's just too open-ended. We have a discrete set of money that that's supposed to get spent in the next 3 years. And so, at least in my opinion, we should ask about things where we could have hard numbers.
Mimi?
Yeah, on the dog park, as chair of the master plan committee, a lot of people do want a dog park, but that's a long-term project. Like you have to find a parcel. It's a huge political lift because no one wants to live anywhere near a dog park. So for ARPA, I don't think that it's, I don't think that should be something that we think about using ARPA money for, because it's such a long term. It would take a long time before that ever came to fruition.
Is that fair to call it, to leave it there? This is a long-term project that is already on the radar of the master planning committee. And I see your hand up.
I want to make
me?
it clear, it isn't that I support a dog park or not. It was the concept of what to include. And it seems the majority of the committee wants to include only actionable items. That's fine with me.
I think the only thing I will say to that is I do want to be I think to the extent we can, making actionable recommendations to the select board makes sense. I 100% am in agreement with that. But I do think that we probably will end up with some gaps. Or maybe we won't, but we have not as a committee specifically been told it must be actionable, right? And so I do think it's worth keeping in mind that we can also, if we have, high level budgetary estimates of something, go back to the select board and say, this is something the town really wants. We would recommend you create a project around it, right? We can make a recommendation for the select board to make a project without us being the automatic owners of that project. And I agree it has to have some sort of scaffolding around it, right? Like if something could be like $10 to $35 million, that's not helpful, but and I think potentially as we get towards sidewalks, that'll be one that we find is maybe more open-ended, but also has a lot of public support. Everything's going to come back to sidewalks. I feel like it's always sidewalks.
What sidewalks? We don't have any.
I know we don't have any and everyone wants them, but we don't have, even there, it's not, yeah, anyway. Are we okay to leave off the dog park? I mean, the trash cans, we could even include, are we okay with leaving off trash cans and dog park?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I mean, we
So-
can always put those in our report at the end, say community projects, such
Yeah.
as community ones, such as trash cans along Main Street, dog parks, etc.
And in fairness, this is only an N of one, right? Like this is one person who wrote in, and if we don't include it in the survey, we wouldn't have any additional data beyond that to support it, right? But again, we can include it in a list at the end of our report so that it goes somewhere. Okay, senior center renovations. I think this one we should be on. Preference on wording. This one might be one that I got recommendations from Capital. So I'm just gonna take a quick look and see if there was a way that I was asked to word it.
Now that one is supported by select board already, by what I understand, or no? I'm asking. That's a question, not a statement.
I do not believe that money has been allocated as of now.
And then capital said if we're going to do it now. That's what Jason said at our meeting.
So do it now. What does that mean?
We should approve it so that could be done this year. If we're gonna do it, they should start doing the renovations sooner than later.
And they can have that recommendation in 2 months, right? Isn't that what we said last
Yeah,
week?
but I'm asking, these are, so that's what I'm saying, do we need this? If these are already, if this is kind of already on the radar, do we need to have it on the survey? If capital's saying, we should do it, if selectmen are saying it's a good idea.
I mean, as a committee, we have not advanced this idea yet. We haven't not advanced it.
No,
but we
I'm
have not
talking about for the
advanced it, right?
survey. This is for being on the survey, not for advancing or not advancing.
Why would we not include it? What if nobody says they want it? I don't think that'll happen, but what if it comes back and it's at the absolute bottom of what folks say they want and we get really good? Anne, I see your hand up.
I think it should be on the survey. It was a major proposal from a committee that came before us, or it sent in a proposal.
All right, I'm just looking to see because I think I might have.
Right, I'll just voice my opinion. I agree. It seems like this should be on the survey.
I don't know. Okay.
Just like it seems like the next two items, a category of premium pay.
Yep.
Should be on the survey.
Okay. Any preference on language for the senior center? Senior center renovations? Should we say to include
Expansion.
expansion?
So how about if now we just identify the ones we want to have on the survey and then wordsmith later?
Okay. So this is going to be premium pay. I'm just gonna.
I'd like to hear the committee's opinion on this concept of premium pay.
To what end, Tim?
I just want to hear people's opinions on these line items and try to get a sense of the board.
Joe, I see your hand. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, in response to Tim, I would say probably at the moment, my biggest feeling on the matter is that it was labeled as part of our charge in the ARPA legal description of things that we could do. And so I think it'd be remiss for us to just automatically think that we can pull it out and that it won't come back to us.
Any other? Oh, Anne?
I agree with Joe. It was part of our charge. That's one of the 4 categories that we're allowed to make recommendations on.
Yeah, agree.
So do we all agree that there is a category that is premium pay? And to Tony's point, not wordsmithing right now, but keeping this in as a category.
I don't know that people will understand what it means, but yes.
But we can adjust the language to make it clearer in a minute. I think let's just, to Tony's point, zip through, pick what we want, and then we can go back and tidy up language.
Can always call it hazard pay.
Part-time mental health clinician. So this
Do
is
we
for
find out if that
youth-friendly
was just
services.
a short-term contract? Or if that's a permanent part-time?
Let me. Pull it up. I did send out the note.
Because if it's temporary
About-
COVID thing, I agree. But if it's a new employee, I don't think it should be funded at our.
All right, let me ask this. I've got a handful of, I've got a couple different staffing requests. I mean, we could just have a staffing bucket. Or are we thinking this should not be?
I agree with John. If and I'll take it a step further and say if it's not temporary, we should vote to shoot it down.
We did just send a note out last week after our meeting saying that we would consider staffing requests, but asking that folks consider moving their requests into their budget because we have hesitancy around it.
Did you get any responses?
I got no responses.
Yeah, I agree with the temporary, and if it's for COVID related things, like if you look down to Sarah's request for the 1 year the next one, or a couple down, the 1 year contract with Interface, no brainer to me. If that's what they need, yep, you know. But if it's gonna incur like long-term contracts or anything with OPEB or anything to that effect in benefits, no. Because you start funding positions with one-time grants and things like that, just opening a world of hurt.
I agree, especially if you have a 3-year contract you sign with somebody and you only have funding for the first year. It's a really bad idea.
I agree.
So this is youth and family services, mental health support. Part-time clinician, all youth and family service. Yeah, I'm just looking through it. Recognizing this additional support will be temporary, this position will be advertised like a grant-funded position. So the intent here is temporary.
I'm sorry, which one was that, 13?
This is 13. This is this is 11. It says recognizing the additional support would be temporary, this position would be advertised like a grant-funded position.
So you want to call it, what do you want to call it? Temporary relief staffing?
I'd be
I
okay
think
with that wording, Tim.
Because I've got other things too, right? Like I've got per diem vaccination staff that come up with Board of Health. This one's a little bit different, but there's more than one that's kind of this like short-term COVID staffing. So for right now, in the interest of moving, I'm just gonna call this like temporary. Someone had said it nicely. I don't, but
Tim did. Can you say it again?
what did you
Tim?
say, Kim?
It was
Tim?
very eloquent.
I said temporary relief staffing.
All right, we can come back and we want to adjust later. Okay, so I'm going to leave that like that. Then the marketing and outreach materials. This is marketing around sort of what services are available through youth and family services. I'm just taking a look to see if there's other stuff that's kind of similar to that. I don't know. What do folks think about that one? I feel like that.
Think about the marketing and outreach.
Yeah, like how do we want to classify it? Do we want to classify it? Do we see it kind of being linked to something else? Joe, I see your hand.
Are you talking right now about trying to put it on the list of priorities?
Right, for the survey. So how would you list that in the survey?
I'm not even sure I'd bother to list it. I think I would think it's something that if you put that on there, nobody's going to prioritize youth and family services marketing outreach. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's such a small budget item. I would say, look, if we want to fund, if we have a good reason to fund it, you know, in our dealings with youth and family services through ARPA, then we'll just fund it for $5,000. I wouldn't even bother to put it on the list at $5,000. I think that's one of those things where if we feel that youth and family service needs it, we'll just throw it into our youth and family services sort of bundle of what we're willing to throw at them.
Amy, I see your hand.
Yeah, I wonder, instead of listing out all the requests from youth and family, if we can just have a survey item support for youth and family services or something like that. And then we can prioritize where, you know, specific funds go.
I love that idea. And yeah, bundle it as you could do it as youth and family services, marketing, outreach, and additional aid or something of that nature. That'd be a great great item. People can say, I think it's important. And we can prioritize, within here, what we think are the best ways to do that. Shorten the list too. That war of attrition that Tim was talking about the last time.
Yep. Okay, so that would we'd bucket the part-time mental health clinician, marketing and outreach materials, and the 1-year contract with interface referral services all together in that.
Yeah.
Whatever, put all 3 together. John, I see your hand.
That's what I was talking about bucketing earlier, and that's what I meant, if we could put it into one thing. When you asked me an example and I didn't have one like that.
All right. Joe, did I see your hand? Oh, did we lose Joe? No.
I'm
Oh,
here,
no.
but
Oh,
my hand's
no.
not up.
Okay. For some reason I thought I saw it. Okay, let's keep going then. I had this one. I think this goes into the category of doesn't really have any kind of submission with it. So this was a support bucket from Youth and Family Services around affordable housing opportunities, but I don't have any. I have no proposal that backs that up. Is that something we would include, or is that something we would remove?
I
You may be
think
shaking your head. Yeah.
I think to John's point, you might be able to bundle affordable housing in with, for instance, relief to renters as opposed to, it's sort of a bucket around housing. So if you can put this in with, renters assistance, all those sorts of things. I think you could bucket that as well, and maybe take 2 or 3 of them and bucket in there.
Okay. Upgrade towns. Okay, so the next I have a series from Municipal Technology. So these might be something you want to consider in the same way that we did Youth and Family Services. The only thing I'll say is these are really significant line items. So maybe they do deserve their own line. So, okay, the first is upgrade the town's website to support more collaborative features. We've got Wi-Fi capabilities at specific town facilities, implementing town-wide event scheduling and registration system, and then implementing an interactive conference room capabilities. So again, it's a bucket of sort of upgrading our overall technological infrastructure in town. I will just point out that, right, like these are some of our largest line items, like altogether, this is almost $1 million. I think these are also ones that will be hard for someone to kind of be able to prioritize and understand in a survey. So I'm not totally sure how to think about that. Joe?
Sorry, left my hand up. Not.
Okay. So maybe let's start with the first one here. So it's upgrade the town's website to support more collaborative features. I mean, we could just pull up the proposal. See if there's a better way to say this. This is the website. Okay. So this is upgrading the town's website to support easier access to key town services. The current website is old and difficult to navigate. Pandemic has made access to key town services essential. Need to update the town website to highlight the services the town can provide to citizens, including adding features such as subscribe, notification, easier access to meetings, and key contacts. So I think this bucket would just be something like upgrading the town website. Do folks agree with that as its own
Sounds good.
standalone line?
Sounds good.
Okay.
You might want to call it just, collaborative communication and collaboration.
So I think that's not as much this. So this one I think is truly upgrading the website.
For collaborative features.
Yeah, I don't know what the more collaborative features. So when I look here, it's sort of like, yeah, I think that's the subscribe, notification, easier access to meetings and key contacts.
Matt is in the audience. Do you want to let him talk? He has not raised his hand. I guess I'm volunteering him if you want more information.
He's got a chat message.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a website
Someone-
redo.
So overhaul town website. Tony, I see your hand.
Yeah, some other hands up here, but I'll just speak. So on the questionnaire, maybe just to back up for a second. So we're gonna have some categories. Are we gonna list the cost of each of the categories, or are we gonna just list the categories?
Last week, I believe we had said that we didn't think we should list cost. If
Okay,
folks
that makes
feel
sense to me.
differently.
Nope,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me. So if we're not listing cost, it seems like the municipal technology, these 3 items or 4 items are could just be described as one item and associate, a set of town IT infrastructure upgrades with whatever language we want to put on there.
So I would add a caveat for line 16. It's a pretty serious IT cybersecurity initiative that advisory has been pushing for the last 2 years, along with our technology committee. I would probably carve that one out as a higher priority item. But again, I wouldn't mind Matt speaking to that one. It all depends whether or not you want him to at this point.
I'm okay with that. The only other piece I would say towards bucketing them is if we, the committee, right, because these are so large, we might find that we can't do all of them or we have to prioritize in some way. And if we don't separate them, then we won't have that prioritization for ourselves. I think I see, Joe.
The Wi-Fi upgrades is going to be paid for one way or another, is what I would tell you. I know it's come through capital before and it's going to come through capital again and it's going to go. So that's one of those things where if it's coming up as a project that we're going to do, if ARPA's not going to fund it, town's going to pay for it.
Ann?
I mean, it would
Okay,
still have to go
okay.
through town meeting, right? You can't assume success.
That's absolutely true, but it's gonna go through onto the warrant one way or the other if we don't fund it.
Ann?
For purposes of the survey, could we break it just into 2 pieces, all these technology things? Technology to improve the efficiency of town offices and technology to improve citizen access to town services, something like that. So that's for scheduling and recreation sign up and whatever. And the town side would be the improvement of the website, the Wi-Fi, and cybersecurity.
Say that again. Technology to improve town resident
Efficiency of town operations
That's not this
or
one. but-
municipal operation, and technology to improve citizen access. Unless somebody feels it's necessary to list each project under that.
Should we do like an example of what that means? Like include it,
I think to Tim's point, if we're looking at the Wi-Fi is also a security issue, let's throw security into that one. Because I think it's a hot topic for most people, and I think everybody would appreciate the fact that that's really a not a usability issue, but a safety issue.
My Shopsy meeting got hacked a couple weeks ago.
really?
Yeah, somebody was just putting very inappropriate chats in. And
Really?
I thought they had disabled the chats, but I mean,
Mm.
people keep popping in here, and we were told by Jay that they had disabled chats. But yeah, there was some very inappropriate but kind of funny things being typed in.
Okay, so technology to improve efficiency of municipal operations, including cybersecurity upgrades.
Yeah.
And conference room capabilities. Does that make
It's a long
sense?
category.
It is.
A long survey item.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have, I feel like if I was just coming in and reading that, I would have no idea what it meant, and I would think it was boring and didn't help me and would put it at the bottom of the list. That would be my interpretation.
Could you just say improved Wi-Fi and security for town departments, town offices, something like that?
Moved security, cybersecurity. And what was the other one?
Wi-Fi, I think it was.
And Wi-Fi. or an internet access.
Although somebody said website was more important, so I don't know.
But that's, the website would be the interactive one for the community, right?
I guess.
If cyber, municipal or improved
Matt
municipal.
suggested improved Wi-Fi, cybersecurity, and conference rooms.
Conference rooms. Improved municipal, right?
Thanks, Matt.
It's not like for everyone. Or, I don't know, sorry, go ahead. I heard someone say something. Do we want to include Matt in the conversation?
Probably be
Sure.
easier than watching them trying to type down there and
Yeah.
pull it up.
Can someone pull Matt over and make him a speaker?
And that's where we get the group chant, Matt, Matt,
Okay.
Matt, Matt, Matt.
Matt's allowed to talk now.
Okay.
I,
Hey, Matt.
yeah, I like the push to consolidate and something that's that people can understand, like improve municipal Wi-Fi, cybersecurity, and conference rooms. So yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. And then
the other two are, I think we can improved technology, improved citizen access. I think there's got to be some way of simplifying this even further. That one even further. Something like, redo town website, inclusive of event scheduling and registration. I mean, it's basically that's sort of the bundle. And I think everybody who goes to the town website thinks this is ancient.
Yeah.
It needs to redo.
we just say upgrade the town website.
Sure. Yeah.
Should we include
I
the event
think-
scheduling or, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Ann, sorry.
I think that it should include the event scheduling and registration because that's what people look for.
That's good.
Event scheduling and registration.
I'd like to
Yeah.
announce I am ancient and I didn't notice.
What is that? So what would be an example of the event scheduling and registration?
So like the rec department, as of today, the rec department maintains their own event scheduling registration system.
Yeah.
If you want a rec event, they use a system called MyRec. The library has its own system. The senior center, they use paper and pen mostly for their event scheduling and registration. And so all of these different town departments have their own methods of doing things, and some are on paper, some are through different sites. It'd be nice to have like one system to understand, hey, what events are coming up in the town and which department is sponsoring it? Can I register for that? Is this online or is it in person? So forth, and sort of more of a single look and feel rather than everybody doing it their own way.
Can I add the word consolidated then? Because the immediate thing I was thinking of is the rec department, and I was saying I could already register for things in the rec department. What are we right? So is that
Great.
Does that make it
great.
clear?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Are we good with this?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So that covers, I think, all the municipal technology pieces, right? Because we've got the website, Wi-Fi capabilities, townwide event scheduling and registration, and the interactive conference rooms covered in those two categories. Good. Joe, you're shaking your head as if you're thinking.
No, I'm dancing. I'm amusing myself.
Okay. All right. Fund sidewalk work from repairs to new installations.
Sidewalk, sidewalk.
That's I know.
Yes.
Are we good with this as the language?
Yeah, that's pretty much sums it all up, doesn't it?
All right. Premium pay for full and part-time fire department members. We had talked above about having a bucket for premium pay, so I think we can keep going. This one purchased 600 voting devices, including the software and receivers to enable voters at town meetings to vote electronically in person.
This one's kind of a hot topic, controversial item. I don't know that we want to jump into these waters. I would advise Jim to reach out to the public himself and get feedback on whether town meeting attendees want this or not before he tries to fund it and implement it. There are a lot of people on both sides of the aisle here.
Joe, I see your hand.
Yeah, Capital just had a little, had Jim come and talk about these. Part of the initial plan is, I believe it will go through to annual meeting, but the current plan would be to actually rent them for with approval, rent them for a meeting. And then if the town would like them, then that would be rolled into a purchase. So that was the plan that was laid out at Capital. And they did go onto the capital plan, but as Tim says, I mean, everything goes through town meeting, so
So do we
don't know what to
think,
make of that.
I haven't heard anything additional from Jim pulling it as a proposal. Do we think that based on that feedback that we think it likely is pulled? Is it something I should reach out to Jim and ask?
I think it'd be interesting to see how people in the town rank it, but to Tim's point, everything comes down to what's going to go through town meeting for the most part anyway. I don't look at this as something that ARPA necessarily has to fund. We can talk about it later. You can just put it on the survey and see what happens.
Any other thoughts, opinions? I mean, we can include it, and if it gives us feedback, we don't have to recommend it if the feedback isn't positive. And even if it is significantly positive, if there's other impediments, we can always choose not to recommend it.
Let me put it this way. You shouldn't, and Jim's the clerk, not me, you shouldn't be changing the process at town meeting without asking town meeting. And by getting money from ARPA, it's like it's giving the impression of short-circuiting town meeting's opinion on this, and I think it's a terrible idea.
Tony?
I find though that description from Tim to be very compelling. And so I would, based on that, not include this in the survey. My opinion.
Joe?
It doesn't eliminate individual voting at the town meetings. All it does is digitally record votes, so they don't have to do manual counts. That's pretty much the most of it. I'm not
No, that's not
disagreeing
the
with the way
most of it, Joe. I hate to interrupt you there. The most of it is that it takes a transparent vote where people are forced to identify themselves in their stance, and it turns it into an anonymous vote, more like what you see at the polls in the schools. It's a huge change to how town meeting operates, and it's not something that the clerk should be doing, particularly without the will of the hall.
Anne, saw your hand. Did you put it down?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if they're looking for feedback from town meeting, I mean, aren't town meeting members going to be responding to the survey? I mean, isn't it just getting that feedback? It's not saying we're going to do it. We're asking people, what do they think? In other words, I'm supporting what Joe said.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts to leave it on.
I mean, we have a proposal for it. We're soliciting feedback from the town. If what we end up deciding in deliberation is that we don't think this is served through ARPA money, it would be best served going through town meeting, then I think we have every right to say that, right? Even if it comes back with strong support. But if we don't include it, we're basically making the decision to eliminate it today without having had that deliberation. I guess is my feeling on it. So what do we think? I feel like I've got folks in favor, I've got folks against. Do we want to take a vote on this? Do we want, again, I think removing it from the survey is effectively us deciding that we're choosing to not include it in our deliberation, right? And I think that's something we have to really consider.
Could you just poll the committee?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then we can
okay,
move on.
let's do that. Yep. All right, so let's go around. Anne,
I'm in favor of keeping it on the survey.
Tim,
I'm against.
Mimi,
In favor of keeping it on the survey.
Joe,
I'd keep it on so that we can have the conversation later.
Tony,
Yeah, I'm against putting it on the survey.
John,
Go either way, leave it. I think leave it on for now, though.
okay. And I will also say leave it on. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for leave it on and 2 for remove it. So we leave it on. Okay. So electronic clickers, we can change the language to enable in-person electronic voting.
I would add the word anonymous.
Okay. To enable anonymous, oh God, this is gonna be bad. In-person electric voting at town meeting. Okay. Various ADA compliance issues throughout town buildings. This one I'm a little confused at because the final request came in at 50,000. And I know when we had the discussion in our meeting, it was for the 150 to 200 for additional projects. So this almost looks like what's already in the budget. With that being said, I mean, I've also got an ADA compliance around the fields. And so we could just make a generic bucket that's ADA compliance upgrades in buildings and fields or something like that and cover both of them in one.
Yep.
And get more clarification as we go.
Another example of those buckets, Ann.
Yeah, does that, do folks agree with that approach? Okay.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Compliance or just upgrades to town facilities. Just leave it like that. Okay. Lundbald field renovations. Or Lumblad field renovations. This one, I had a comment that it was already approved. So I don't know if there's money that's coming separately for this.
Lundblad is the landfill. And I remember a few years back that, I don't know who it was, the EPA or whomever, but they changed the rules on us and we had to start doing a different series of tests, and it impacted the master plan that Recreation had developed in terms of how they wanted to renovate the fields. I don't know where this sits now.
So this is one of Recreation's requests. I mean, do we want to just say Lundblad field renovations and just leave it on there? Joe, go ahead.
No, I think that's exactly what you should do. Lundblad is that we've all driven to buy it. It's on Parkerville. It's the one right along the road in front of Neary.
Should we like clarify what this is?
I would just
some
put it
way?
on there as I
Okay.
just put it on there, just like you said. Renovations to
Renovation.
Lundblad Field.
Okay.
Just leave it.
Right.
That feels funny. If your kid's playing on one side of the field and you're sitting on the other, sometimes you can't see him because it's kind of snooped.
Good. ADA upgrades to facilities. So again, this one is a separate ADA upgrade that came from Recreation. I think it's captured in that one bucket. Does that make sense?
Quick question on that.
Yes.
This might be more to Joe. Are we talking about facilities that we might actually sell off in a handful of years or less?
Are you asking me about Lundblad Field?
No, I'm sorry, ADA upgrades to facilities.
Oh, I don't know what these are specific to.
So, Tim-
There's so many ADA upgrades in the ADA report that we could throw, $1 million at it and still be going.
Is it fair to
part-
say that if Tim's submitted this, then he's talking about the South Union building?
This is,
Wow, that's a hard one to say. I don't know how to answer that.
well, we can open the proposal.
I think it's fields.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but hang on. Recreation. Da-da-da. ADA upgrades facilities, specifically the replacement of water fountains and picnic tables that are located within public playgrounds and parks. The amenities in their current form do not meet ADA standards.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know that.
All right, so we're good. We've got a single bucket around ADA upgrades. The feasibility study for NERI. So I got an email from Jason Malakowski shortly before this meeting saying that this is there's a recommendation for this to be pulled because there's funding that's likely coming through the state separately. I am getting confirmation that that's not just coming through his capacity as capital, that that's the full agreement with the school board and the district. It looks like it is. I just wanted to clarify that, but assuming that's the case, then I think this is no longer on our list.
Is that the potential? That was a pretty good size expense too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't have an expense yet for it. They were waiting to finalize the number. So
I think it's 950,000 or something like that.
Wow, that's great that they found other funding.
I think it's in the warrant, isn't it?
Was that what it is?
So there's
That's
a
also
yeah.
a large enough cost to be bonded on its own. So that would be another reason for us to consider not doing that, because it can be wrapped into the bonded funding for any project moving forward.
who was welcomed. Let's see here. NERI School is officially welcomed to the eligibility phase by the MSBA based on guidance that we received since that date. If we get ARPA funds, we reduce the chance of potential state matching funds. Yeah, so like I said, I'm relatively confident he's speaking for the whole group there. I'm just confirming that that's the case and that this is just in the capacity as the capital as his position on capital. But my understanding is this is no longer on here. If for some reason he came back and said no and this had to go back on, I think it would just be the feasibility study for NERI, right? That's its own item. Okay, these are Board of Health. There's a bucket here. Maybe this is similar to Youth and Family Services. So there is a Greater Boroughs Public Health escalation. There is a staff funding for a director position. I have been told this is already approved by the select board and is no longer in our purview, at least for the first year. I think the second year might be. I have to get clarification on that, but I don't actually think we vote on this one. A per diem vaccination staff. Then there's these ones around septic. So digitization of septic files, and this is software around tracking septic in town, I believe. So I would almost maybe see like this as two categories. So one is kind of the generic, like the Youth and Family Services, but the septic kind of feels like maybe its own project. Or we can just create one bucket. What do folks think?
It could be one
And-
bucket.
I'm fine with one.
I'm fine with one. I was going to say something like Board of Health enhancements to address needs from the pandemic or exposed by the pandemic.
I think that's the first three. The only one I'd say is I don't think the septic would fall in that bucket.
Oh, I thought it was to analyze.
Septic falling in a bucket. Oh,
Oh, no. I think it's to track like septic. Maybe I'm wrong. Hold on. For some reason, I thought it was more around like our septic infrastructure.
Oh,
Yeah, Board of Health does the septic permitting under Title V.
Yeah.
oh, okay. I was thinking of a news
The
story
wastewater,
I heard
yeah.
about how they're analyzing the waste.
Yeah. No, I'm just looking at it now. Yeah, so the digitization, so we house a large amount of paper files for septic plans, would need labor costs for scanning documents and holding digitally. And then the septic software in line with recent software for food and housing inspections recently obtained through a public health excellence grant. We are interested in purchasing septic software when that is available. So I think that the first ones are kind of in that bucket of COVID, but that these ones are the septic is a separate project around sort of upgrading our ability to track and manage septic. One bucket or two? What do folks prefer? Two. I see two.
I'll agree
Anyone
with
feel
two.
passionately that it isn't two? All right. So this becomes board. Someone said it nicely. Board of Health upgrades. Board of Health. I think it was you, Anne. What did you say? You always say things nicely. Oh, Anne, you're muted. You're on mute, Anne.
I said Board of Health enhancements to address, I don't know how to say it, pandemic needs, issues exposed by the pandemic, something like that.
Okay, I'll write that in for now. Board of Health enhancements to address needs from the pandemic.
Sure.
Okay. And then upgrades to the town to municipal tracking and maintenance of septic plans or something. Tracking and I don't know. That doesn't sound very nice, but it's good enough for the moment. Good?
Yeah.
Okay. National Grid property in downtown Southborough. Should we call this out as the specific property or just create a bucket purchase of property beneficial to town? What do folks think?
I'd probably put it as the parcel it is. So people know what it's for or what it could be for.
What's the for what's the bet? So folks know what it's for?
Well, it could be used for anything. It could, I mean, it's a parcel that's downtown, which we have, right now, we have limited parking. We have, it could always be green space. It could be purchased and sold off later on if the town didn't want it. It could be used for so many things. If you needed, somebody needed septic, if you want to put a small wastewater plant someday down the road, if it needs, it could be the potential for anything.
It'd make a really nice downtown dog park, John.
Exactly. If somebody wanted a dog park, there's your piece of property back there.
So purchase of downtown parcel for
I just leave it at that.
Yeah, purchase of downtown National Grid property or parcel.
Or just downtown
well, I
property.
think I'd say is if I heard purchase of National Grid downtown property, I would think it had something to do with like electric infrastructure, if I didn't know any better.
Okay. Purchase of available downtown
Land.
land.
Or vacant National Grid parcel.
That's good.
Vacant National Grid parcel in downtown Southborough, in downtown.
Sure.
Good. Funding for signage to mark the Southborough Historic District. Just call it that.
Yep.
Signage to mark the.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a grant out there right now for something like that too. There was, I forget what it was called. I don't know if it was under the shared streets or if it was under something to that effect. But there was four defining an area, you know, for beautification and signage for a sense of place. I wonder if that's still out there. I can talk to Kevin. I see that Kevin Miller put that on. I'll try to reach out to him.
Says at this time, there is no alternative funding source identified.
No, there isn't.
And that's what they put.
Yeah, it might have already gone by. That ship might have sailed. I just remember that from a while ago when we were looking at, as the EDC was looking at it from a year or two ago.
Okay. So almost done here. So this one is again one from a resident, but this goes to the how do we support town pay residents that are not property owners. Tim, to your point, I have no proposal for this. I don't know what to do with it, but I also have a really strong feeling that it is not right for us to only find ways to economically benefit property owners in town.
Could you just put it as an economic relief fund?
I mean, who's not going to vote for an economic relief
Yeah.
fund? It's kind of, leading the horse to water.
Yeah. Need-based? I don't know.
I mean, you're asking people if they want us to send them a check. Everybody's going to say, yeah.
But then maybe if everyone says yeah, does that mean something?
Maybe could you, like you said, do you want to put it as a need based? Does that sound better to you, Tim?
It does. I think need specific or need based relief.
Do you want to say to non-property owners?
I mean, we could. I don't have any opinion on that. I'm sorry. I'll let you go.
What about like inclusive of non-property owners?
So is there a
something?
town organization that we would, or an organization that we would direct ARPA funds to then satisfy this need?
It's an interesting point, Tony. We could suggest, I don't know if it's legit, but we could suggest sending money to the Commissioner of Public Trust Fund.
Right,
Right.
right.
And that, right. And then they would use their normal process to take applications based on need for things like oil, heat, and such.
Right,
Rent, mortgage help.
that's right.
So is that different from, I had reached out to someone on the trust fund and never heard back. And I think there was someone else who was going to do a reach out as well, because there was another name floated. But then I also got something from the Southborough Community Fund, and I was not 100% sure if the Southborough Community Fund is part of the same organization as the trust.
It's different.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian Ballantyne is the treasurer. I believe he runs the community trust fund that Tim was speaking of. And, residents can put applications through him. And then it goes into, they have a committee that reviews and votes on whether they should be dispersed or not.
Okay.
Right. So the language here could be provide something like provide funds to the, what is the word? Community Trust Fund?
Commissioner of Trust Funds is the name of the board that manages it. Commissioner
Okay.
of Public Trust, I think.
So provide funds to the Commissioner of Public Trust to benefit, I don't know, I don't know what other words you
I
want
mean,
to
do
add.
we need to get specific right now? Can we just say, like, if we believe that there's an avenue for this and it's just a matter of like digging at it, can we just leave it as like establish a needs-based fund that is inclusive of or something to that effect? I mean, do we have to specify how it would be managed if we don't have 100% clarity on that yet, but we think we can go through this avenue? Joe?
Yeah, I think if you make it ambiguous enough, nobody's going to vote for it because they have absolutely no idea what it would go for. But I appreciate the conundrum that we're all wrestling with.
Could we say something like provide for need-based relief?
Or we could say just tax
Or
relief to
resident.
renters.
Is that all it is tax relief? I
Well-
thought it was more other kinds of relief also.
Economic relief.
The write-in was for relief for renters that will not benefit from tax relief being property owners. Because if we do tax relief, town revenue is on property tax. So they'd be paying property tax through their landlord and not be compensated. So they'd be paying the taxes, and then the landlord would be compensated through the tax relief, but they wouldn't necessarily see that.
And ARPA is federal money, right? So this is money that everyone in town has paid into. But if
Yes.
we only do property tax relief, only a portion of the town recognizes anything from that.
We could label it something like tax relief equity. We could, because using the community fund or other funds, I think is a mechanism by which we recommend it be distributed. But the actual issue
Yes.
involved is really, tax relief equity.
Well, people
Right.
understand what that means.
I like the,
I'm struggling to.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Mimi.
I like the needs-based economic relief. I thought that was, because I didn't know what the trust was until last meeting. I never even heard of it.
We
I
say
think that's understandable. People understand needs-based economic relief.
like
for
it's not
residents?
necessarily, yeah. It's not necessarily a check for everyone. There's a criteria for need that we have not established yet, but that's the intent is to make sure there is avenues for relief to all Southborough residents. Is that correct, the intent? I mean, the other piece is, I think, Joe, when you say tax sort of parity relief, that's a slightly different thing, right? Because that's, is everyone, if average Southborough residents get $200 off their taxes, is the goal to provide $200 to every resident through some mechanism, or is it to really be able to provide need-based relief that might be more than 200 if needed, or less than, right? Those are two different things.
So I'll try another proposal, because I like this: provide needs-based economic relief, comma, through support of the Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds.
I think there's more than just the trust funds, isn't there?
Yeah, because this also
As
goes
the-
back to,
the
I know we have
Friends
some,
of the Youth and Family Services. There's like 3 or 4 different groups, aren't there, in town?
yeah, and I know there's been some reach outs to like the food pantry, and they can do like more than just like they provide more than food. Like they'll do I think like gas gift cards and things like that. So I think there's,
Did she ever reach out to you?
I have not heard back, no.
I'll reach out to her again tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I know she wanted to.
Is this sufficient? I mean, we don't have to say how we're doing it yet, right? Like, do
Right.
people want? Right? We just leave it at this?
Yep.
If nobody wants it, then maybe it's not even worth like fleshing out, right?
Nope, it's good.
Okay. All right. We're at 9 o'clock. So let's knock through these last two here. So this one, again, I don't think this goes on the on the survey. There's $5,000 that I guess the ARPA money triggers an audit. So there's $5,000 that I guess is coming out of our funds for an audit. I think that's just pre-allocated at this point. And then this one that is new and came through yesterday is for mini grants in the area of education, arts, culture, and environment in Southborough through the Southborough Community Fund. So would this just be mini grants?
How does this one fit into the ARPA buckets?
I think it can, because if the grants would have been filled through any other town funding, right? And very clearly we're allowed to set up small community grants through the funding, right? Like I think there's clear categories for that, or maybe the education, arts and culture or not. I don't know.
It's a significant community want. Wasn't that one of the categories?
Or Tim, are you talking about towards our own goals, or are you talking about just legally through the ARPA money?
Legally, what the state has provided us, right? It was COVID relief, service restoration. I'm not getting it right.
Yeah, I'm
Service
pulling it up.
restoration.
I'm looking because there was one I think that talked towards. Yeah, so okay, to just respond to the public health emergency or its negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or aids to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. Respond to workers' essential work, services related to COVID-19, and be used for costs incurred with a specific. Why is this not? This is. Sorry, I'm just looking through the categories here. I think there was something around providing kind of small grants for various things. I'm just looking.
I think Tim brings up a good point legally, although I think we could probably fund a good portion of these through recreation, subsidizing budget over there and allowing the money to be freed up for other recreational functions, which would certainly include education, arts, and culture.
Mhm.
So that would be a rationalization of how it might be done. But Tim's right, there might be some stipulations in here.
I mean, my general understanding was that if it's not in the not included bucket, then we can justify almost anything,
Yeah.
right? Like there's
If-
support to, yep, sorry, go ahead.
If we just go with the idea that this is the survey and we'll ask people and determine the legality of it later.
Yeah.
This will certainly be an ongoing discussion, and Tim could be fully 100% right about this. And it's not something we can't do, but in terms of the survey, it might be interesting just to know that people are for, money to go into education, arts, culture, and environmental initiatives.
Yeah. I mean, particularly in that education want bucket, I mean, there's enormous COVID impact within the education space, right? Similarly, I know in the interim rule, there was a lot of talk about upgrades to outside areas that may have gotten more use during COVID. So I expect environment to, I'm inclined to just leave it on, and we can dig more into the specifics of how it would work and how it would potentially like stack up against the rule as we go on. Is that all right with folks?
Yep.
I just want to let you know that there's an audience member with their hand up. I don't know if you want to just have them type in the chat like Matt was doing earlier, or you want to wait to public comment. I just want to let you know that there's somebody with their hand up.
I'm okay with taking comment now. If someone wants to promote, my view when I'm sharing the screen is really limited, so I can't do a promote.
Okay, I just wanted to bring up when this committee first started developing the criteria for your requests, one of the categories was alternative funding. And I do not see this on the chart. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because you had a consultant come to one of your first meetings. And at that time, she talked a lot about housing funds from the state, rents, mortgages, taxes, things like that. And I think it may be prudent to have her come back to the committee, because there may be some other avenues that some of these areas could be funded. I'm thinking about the police stipends, police and fire stipends. I know there's Governor Baker put aside some ARPA money that he kept initially, and I don't know if that's still in a bucket, but could the police and fire stipends come from that bucket? As far as some of these sidewalks, we have the big federal infrastructure bill that passed, can some of that come from that area? So I don't know if the consultant knows all the answers, but I do remember her very specifically talking about a lot of housing funds that were available to people in the community, and it may be worthwhile to check with her.
I agree with you, Marianne, but I do think like this is just a survey to find out what people are wanting in town. And once we get all this information on the wants, I think, because we have to pay her, like that comes out of the ARPA money as well every time we meet with the consultant. So I think it would be beneficial after everything's said and done, have her take a look at this, because she could say, like I was saying earlier, that for the historical signs, there might have been grant money for that, but they didn't think there was alternatives. But I definitely think we should have her go through our list and just once we have all the criteria put in to see what's out there at the end. But I don't think we should go with it right now with everything. This is just for a survey. But once we find out what people want, we can find out what's other monies are available. She might even know other monies that aren't available now that might be coming up in the next 6 months or a year, even, which I think is be helpful.
I'm just thinking if she says, yes, the police and fire can be funded from this pot, it wouldn't even have to go on the survey then. That's my only question.
Yeah, no, thanks, Marianne. I appreciate the comment. I think given our timing right now, I don't think that there's a vetting process in the schedule before the survey goes live. And so, but I agree, John, with what you're saying, that, there's a parallel path of screening through some of these things, looking at alternative sources. I know one of our questions in our survey is, are you currently pursuing, or are there available for you alternative fund opportunities? So I think that's absolutely part of our criteria for how we evaluate these. I just think in terms of orders of operations, because we have to move so fast, it doesn't allow us to do that sort of pre-vet at this point before the survey goes out. Okay. Joe.
I was about to say, the fact that there are other funds available doesn't mean that they're going to meet the needs of what the programs might be in the end anyway. So I think everybody's on the right track of saying, look, let's just see what happens and see what's popular.
And then alternative funding is part of our evaluation.
We're going to check things off after the fact then to have eliminated them up front.
Yep. So we are at 9:10. We only have 20 minutes left. I want to run through what we have for buckets here. I don't think we have time to belabor wordsmithing. I know Anne has been working on the survey. I'd be happy to do a review of language or something like that, but maybe we just run through real fast and see what we've got, because I think we're down to a pretty reasonable number of things now. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 categories now, down from our original, I think it was 32. So that seems, does 17 seem manageable?
To me, it does.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Are you going to pass along that language?
Yes,
so that
I will
Matt
send this
can
out.
put it in?
Yep. Okay, so what we have for the tax abatement, we have property tax abatement / relief. We have senior center expansion, premium pay. I'm just looking at the exact language that's around that for eligible employees. I don't know, premium pay for eligible town employees.
Why don't we call it compensation pay? So that's really what it is.
Okay.
Or-
COVID compensation pay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's clear.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they say that you can't pay people backwards, but the reality is we're sort of doing that, even though they say you can't do it, but then they tell you essentially that that's what you are doing by giving premium pay to people for pandemic reasons. So it's kind of like they've thrown out the catch-22 in two different phrases, but essentially that's what it is compensation pay.
But explicitly for what?
For in-person work during COVID-19.
Additional effort, additional problems. There were a lot of
To respond
I
to
think
workers performing essential work during COVID-19 public health emergency, providing premium pay to eligible workers.
Could
That is a
we,
category that we can do. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
to me, I don't know if people are going to understand that premium or compensation they understand, but couldn't you just say bonus pay for COVID essential workers? Something
For
simple?
town workers who performed essential work during the COVID-19 health emergency.
Something like that. That may take up a lot of space.
Okay. For essential, I just want to be clear, it's town, right? It's not like we're not
Yeah.
for town employees.
Is there an assumption that all of them did it and they're all getting it and there's no accounting? Or I mean, how does this work?
No. Right now, I only have requests for fire and police. I don't
Okay.
think we can have a meaningful conversation that doesn't consider who else would potentially be eligible when we have that conversation.
Okay,
This is a very specifically a category that is allowed to be funded here. And I have two specific requests, actually three when you count that two come from two different unions.
okay.
If the state's going to fund that, we won't even have to consider it, depending what the consultant says.
This is just copying, aside from the word bonus, this is just copying and pasting from what the language in the rule. Bonus pay for town employees who perform essential work during the COVID-19 health emergency. Good?
Works for me.
Okay. Youth and Family Services, marketing outreach, an additional aid, an additional services, or an additional town services.
Yes.
Relief to, oh, we covered this below, so this actually goes away. So we have 16. Upgrade the town website, including consolidated event scheduling and registration, improved municipal Wi-Fi, cybersecurity, and conference rooms, fund sidewalk work from repairs to new installations, electronic clickers to enable anonymous in-person electronic voting in town meeting, ADA compliance upgrades to town facilities, Lundblad field renovations, Board of Health enhancements to address needs from the pandemic, upgrades to the municipal tracking of septic plans, purchase of vacant National Grid parcel in downtown, signage to mark the Southborough Center Historic District, provide needs-based economic relief, and mini grants in the area of education, arts, and culture and environment. Oh, in the Southborough. I don't know what that means. I'm just gonna say this. Are we good with that?
It looks good to me, Andrea.
Okay.
I might want to ask Matt if the categories work. I don't know. Do we need his feedback on that? If he's still
Yeah.
out there?
Do we still have Matt in the audience?
He said, yep, they were.
All right.
I
I'm also,
only have
I-
one question. I just wonder if the very
ahead.
first one, if we can eliminate abatement. I don't know if just tax relief is sufficient. I don't know if everyone knows what abatement means.
property tax relief.
Works.
Okay. Property tax relief, senior center expansion, bonus pay for town employees who performed essential work during the COVID-19 health emergency, youth and family services, marketing outreach, and additional town services. I mean, should we just say youth and family services additional town service or youth and family additional town service, or maybe that's fine.
And if you want to cut it down, just go youth and family services outreach.
Are we good with
That-
that? Upgrade the town website, including consolidated event scheduling and registration. Improve municipal Wi-Fi, cybersecurity, and conference rooms. Fund sidewalk work from repairs to new installations. Electronic clickers to enable anonymous in-person electronic voting at town meeting. ADA compliance to town facilities. Lundblad field renovations. Is there any additional, like, do people know what that means? I would not know what this means. I don't know if that's
Lundblad, well, you could, I mean, it's a soccer field.
soccer field renovations. Like even just adding soccer field makes it much clearer to me what this is.
Okay.
I don't know.
Just depends on how many kids play on it.
You want to put it as recreational field?
I
General.
think if you leave it just the way she said, I think everybody will get it.
Board of Health enhancements to address needs from the pandemic. Upgrades to municipal tracking of septic plans, purchase a vacant national grid parcel in downtown. And this one to me, if I probably wouldn't know what this meant as a standalone, but I'm okay to leave it as is if folks.
Um, I don't know how else to say it.
Some things just are what they are.
Yeah, okay. Signage to mark the Southborough Center Historic District. We say sign to mark
Yeah.
the Southborough
Or signs.
I
signs.
think it's individual signs on historic homes.
Signs to mark the Southborough Center Historic. Just if I pluralize it, does that make it clear?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Provide needs-based economic relief and mini grants in the areas of education, arts, and culture and environment. Good.
If you want to eliminate mini, I'd be fine with that as well.
Grants. Okay. All right. I am also fine if, as Matt is typing these in, if there's minor grammatical changes and tenses and things that need to be tidied up, that's fine.
On the National Grid property, should we put for future town use?
Yes, that helps me. Does anyone disagree with that?
Because we don't have any purpose for it yet.
Can we
It
say
could be used
how
for a lot. I
big- Can we say how big the property is?
think it's like almost 2 acres,
That might be helpful.
but I'm
Yeah.
not, but I'm just guessing. It could be this big and I'm saying it's almost 2 acres. So.
Do we have that? Is that easy to like know? Because I think that's true, right? Like if this is like a really significant portion of land for the town to own, that
It's bigger than this.
You could leave in the 2 acres and whatever it is, it is.
yeah, okay. If we think it's a significant area, I think that's all that conveys.
Sam
Purchase of-
just put it in. It's 1.67 acres.
all right. Purchase of 2 acre that
Thank you,
rounds.
Sam.
Purchase of 2 acre vacant National Grid parcel in downtown for future town use. Good.
Yeah, I would put 1.67.
You would put 1.67. How about 1.7?
Fine with me.
Okay. All right. Good. Anything else on the survey? All right, I've only got 10 minutes. The only other thing I think it's important to talk about, and this is hopefully just a 1 or 2 minute conversation. So John had reached out about doing the every door mailer. It seems costs have shifted significantly since the last time they were done. They're now going to be almost $2,000. We do not have that budget currently. it's not clear we would get the budget, and even if we did, it would take some time to get it reapproved. So I think at this point, the mailer is out. So instead, do we want to put some flyers somewhere?
John, what happened on the cost side?
So so I went to our post office and got, I was speaking with them, and they said all the EDDMs have to be done online. And so the way the town has been doing it before is using the senior center's postal permit, which is wrong, because you don't need the nonprofit because it's an EDDM. It says EDDM right on the thing. So I went over to Westborough's post office and was speaking to the postmaster there, Tom, who said that they are no longer allowed and haven't been allowed to do a 4 1/4 by 5.5 EDDM postcard anymore. And I was like, okay. Then he said the minimum size is 6 by 12. So the town clerk sent me some information of one that he had just done in black and white. So then just before this meeting started, as I was walking in the door, I got my mail, and what was in the mail today? A 4 1/4 by 5.5 postcard size EDDM that they said that can't be done. So it was very convoluted, and the issue was the sizing. So when you go from, a 4 1/4 postcard this big to one that's twice the size, it changes the weight, changes the postage, you're twice the size for the printing. So the printing costs more than doubled. I could even still get those done printed for like $400, but the postage went up on that because it's twice the size of this. From the 16 cents a piece, it went up to, I quoted to Andrea earlier, I think almost $700 just for postage. So the cost went up to almost $2,000 versus $800. And then, like I said, the Westboro postmaster told me that the 4 1/4 by 5.5 is an unacceptable size, yet I got one in the mail today.
So long story short, oh, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Was that for a full mailer size, or was that with a trifold 8 by 8.5 by 11?
Neither one. One was a 6 by 6 1/4 by like an 11 flat, bigger postcard. It's got to be a flat.
Okay.
Versus a postcard size.
Yeah, is there any difference between that and doing like a trifold mailable flyer? So
Yeah, that doesn't fit under the criteria of an EDDM. You'd have to pay 40 to 50 cents per postage just for each of them. There's 3,500 households in town, roughly. So your postage would quadruple.
Yeah, you'll have to forgive me. I'm a little out of date on my mass mailing.
So I think we
Apparently
have
I am too, and didn't think I was.
I think at this point we have to make the assumption that it's not going to happen, right? Because again, we don't have budget for what we need to do now. Importantly, what is included on that mailer now? So there was a question last week about how we're making sure folks who don't have internet access can still access the survey. So Ann and Matt work together, and there's a really great solution. So the senior center will provide paper copies to anyone who calls and asks, and then input answers off of the paper survey. So that phone number is on the postcard. And so I think it's still important that that goes somewhere. And so I'm thinking that we should probably print some and put them places around town at least, so that that information is out there and available, in addition to the My Southborough post and this. Go ahead, Ann.
Matt and I we're going to print off some flyers and post them in local businesses and ask the various town buildings if we could put them there. And I think the senior center was going to have a bunch of flyers, but if anybody, Matt can jump in when you can enable that. He said last year he handed out handbills at basketball games and things like that, so people have the information also.
Yeah, I basically, for various sporting events that occurred during the window of time that the survey was opened, I basically walked out and started handing out flyers to the people watching those sporting events, like the Little League, baseball, etc. So I don't know if that's a good way of doing it, but basically identifying any other sort of activity in town that would attract a large number of residents and trying to target those. But yeah, something we can, if we can put together a list of funds and then sort of divide and conquer by handing
So-
out flyers.
Can I, I'm just looking at the clock here. So it sounds like there's already a plan then to get some of the flyers out. Can I make it an agenda item for next week? I know the survey will already be live at that point, but we can kind of come back on Thursday and talk about potentially if and how we want to get more out, because also that includes the forum, which is not until the 24th. So there's a little bit of time on that. Does that make
Right.
sense? In the interest of time, can we include that as an agenda item for next week?
Yeah, I
Additional
was
sort of
hoping to
flyering.
work with Matt to post some things Monday in
Okay.
various businesses and such.
So I would say whatever you guys already have on plan, just execute to, right? And then we can come back on Thursday, and if there's anything else you need, then we can talk about it there. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Can I just wanted to tell you, I sent information on our meetings and on the survey start to my Southborough.
Southborough,
And-
okay.
And Matt was going to have something put on the website, the town website. And we have a sign going up at the transfer station starting Monday, although it's not open till Wednesday.
Awesome. That's, yeah. And thank you very much, both you and Matt. This is, I mean, I know this has been a huge effort over the last couple of weeks, so really kudos to both of you. This is awesome. Yeah. Round of claps. Yeah. Okay, we are almost at the end. So if I just do a quick circle back on our starting agenda, I think we are where we need to be on the survey, and I will send this to you and Matt right after the meeting is done. I think we don't have to talk about anything on the fund request log. We've talked about community outreach. Is there anything else on community outreach that's urgent that we touch on the next minute? Okay. Evaluation approach discussion. I think that gets kicked to next week. Next steps. I think it's getting the survey out the door, and then like I said, in a matter working on some flyers, and if there's anything else we need to do next week, we'll talk about that next week. I don't think we have any unfinished business to come back to. So that brings me to public comment. So I will open this up if there's any public comment. Okay, I don't see any hands. So next meeting, I've got a room booked next Thursday, 7:30. Is that still good for everyone?
Woohoo!
All right, good. Then I think that does it for today. I guess maybe the other piece next meeting. So I think the main thing to start talking about is how we're doing our evaluation next week. Does that make sense to folks? Is that our number one, is the number one agenda item? Okay. Is there anything else anyone wants to make sure is included? I know we talked about having sort of generic buckets around reviewing the tracker. I'll include that. I'll leave on community outreach so we can come back and talk about if there's any additional help needed around flyers. And then the main piece will be starting to talk about how we're doing our evaluation. Anything else anyone wants to make sure gets included?
Voting on the minutes.
Voting on the minutes. Yep, because we'll have minutes from last week and this week for next week.
I doubt you'll have this week's next week.
Okay, we'll have last week's next week.
If I'm honest.
All right, fair enough.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, thanks, Joe. So we have a second?
Second.
Second,
All right, I'll take a roll call. Ms. Rubenstein,
aye.
Mr. Wood,
Aye.
Mr. Schoner,
Aye.
Mr. Martell,
Aye.
Ms. Luttrell,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
and I will vote aye. So 9:30 on the dot, meeting is adjourned. Talk to everyone next week. Thank you. All right.
Happy
bye.
weekend.
Happy weekend. Bye-bye.